I'm very glad to see you all here today for the International Court of Justice Info Hour. First, I would like to introduce myself. I'm one of the three mentors for the court. My name is Liisa. I've been working within the Estonian Model United Nations for, I would say, 3 years now. I'm currently a third-year law student in the University of Tartu. So this is a topic very close to my heart. And those who maybe have participated in previous years have noticed that usually I'm more connected to the media team because I'm a freelance journalist from a side. And it's such a good thing to finally see a judicial challenge. So the order of the day is first to give you a short introduction on the Estonian Model United Nations overall, then talk a little bit closer about our ICJ and the topic this year. And the last part is to give you an overview of the real life ICJ, what they do. And I think that if you want to participate in our committee, it's really good to look at the real International Court of Justice and the cases they've tried to get a good idea of how they work, and what their cases look like usually. So we'll start with the first part. Those who participated yesterday in the other info hour might have seen this already, so I'll give a quick introduction. So Model United Nations is actually a very common format. It's an educational role play. We are an entry-level one, so we welcome everyone, regardless of previous experience or if it's your first time participating. So this is what we value. We value personal experience and giving you a good overview of the format overall. So our working language is English. This is why we do all of our info hours in English, and all of our committees have a working language in English. We do have new and different formats every year. We have media that was introduced in 2019. We have the historical committee from last year. And this year, this is our first year of doing the International Court of Justice. This year, our conference is in Tammsalu Gymnasium from June 10th to June 13th. And we have 5 committees, 3 of them being traditional committees, 1 being our International Court of Justice, and the last one being media. All of these different committees meet during the General Assembly, and working in regular committees means representing real United Nations delegations during these debates, either formal, informal, and looking to solve problems, seek solutions, and all that comes with it. We like to place a lot of emphasis outside of the committee work to socializing and having fun. This is a very traditional part of a Model United Nations conference. And so this is a very good opportunity to meet fellow delegates, fellow media representatives, fellow judges, if you so wish. But with the format, it's a bit difficult this year. The final decision about the format, be it physical, hybrid, or online, will be made next week. It depends on the governmental guidelines. And if we get some news, we will update you. And any support, regardless of the format, will be provided. And even though we wish to have a fully physical conference, we have to keep in mind that the safety of you, the participants and organizers, is our main priority. Yeah, this is basically the overview of the general rules for this year's MUN. As I mentioned before, we have 5 different committees. We have one on climate, then the International Court of Justice, media, Security Council, and Refugee Agency. And all of these committees will be having info hours, and the info hour on climate change was yesterday, I believe. So general rules for the regular committees are here. For the International Court of Justice, it's going to be a little bit different. But the general rules are business attire, proper terminology, politeness, and following the rules set by the mediators in the committee that will be chairs. In media, it would be mentors, and in ICJ, we would be I don't know what we're calling ourselves, I guess. So this is the end of the first part. Moving on to the second part. Overview of the ICJ, as I mentioned before, it's a bit different. It's a chamber made up of 11 judges and 4 representatives, 2 per team. They would be lawyers in that case. And the session, instead of being like a regular committee session within the Model United Nations committee format, it would be a court hearing. So the judges have to prepare to hear the case. Judges represent different countries as well. We have gone with the current judges serving on the International Court of Justice. Usually there are 15, but this year we decided to have 11 judges and then 4 representatives instead. And lawyers are assigned a role, being either the defense or being either a plaintiff or a defendant. So it's important to prepare in that sense as well. But I think it will make, all of this is very theoretical. I think it will make more sense when we look at the actual case we chose for the International Court of Justice. There are procedures, there's trials, there's final plea, deliberation, and verdict. Trial is the longest. Final plea is your closing statements, and deliberation is for the judges, and the verdict will be given on the last day. So the topic which I wanted to go more in depth with and to give real life examples to all of that theoretical points that I gave earlier. The topic for this year is the case of the Nisour Square massacre. The 2 sides in this case are Iraq and the US. And the overall topics are war crimes, use of mercenaries, and the violation of state sovereignty. The question that we want to ask is, are private military contractors mercenaries? Why we chose that topic is because the use of private military contractors, so a small introduction on them. Private military contractors are private companies that employ either soldiers or security workers, and they operate based on private contracts with the government. So there are private citizens who get paid by the government to participate either in warfare or in different security areas. And why this is very relevant is that the use of private military contractors has been on the rise. So when we're talking about the start of the Iraq War, there would be one private military contractor per 10 actual soldiers. But by 2007, this number had grown exponentially, and there were more private military contractors than actual soldiers. So why does it matter in this case? The Nisour Square massacre took place in 2007, where private military contractors employed by the US military got into a conflict based on mistaken identity and based on mistaken situation, got into a conflict and ended up killing 17 civilians. And what we're interested in is to look at the case from the perspective of international law, because private military contractors are not bound by, if you've heard about anything about military law, you know that everything works within the military. You have court martials and the cases are dealt there. But in this case, because they were private citizens, they weren't prosecuted in Iraq. Rather, they were taken back to the US, where the court process was extremely bumpy, let's put it this way. And those private military contractors, even though they were eventually convicted, were pardoned by Donald Trump in late 2020. But there's this question, why are we asking these legal questions, even though this case is seemingly solved? The reason is that we want to look at this issue more in depth, because not only the US employs private military contractors, there are also these companies within China, within Russia, within certain European nations like the United Kingdom. And we want to ask, is it legal to employ private citizens in these sorts of situations? And this is a very interesting case to look at. And I think that it will give us a good insight into war time law and how we should solve these conflicts. Because the United States, in this current case, escaped responsibility, even though both Iraq and the United Nations saw that they had improperly, perhaps, operated within the country. So this is the overview of the topic. Oh, 1 second. So the judges, 11 judges, are trying this case, and 2 lawyers are assigned to the United States and 2 to Iraq to argue the case. And the final part of this this very long monologue is the International Court of Justice in real life. So this is a judicial organ of the United Nations, the principal one, and they were established in 1945. They're set in Hague, in the Peace Palace, and the court offers two types of opinions. There are the actual verdicts on cases. So in order for a case to actually go to the International Court of Justice, the two sides have to be countries themselves. So the International Court of Justice isn't a court where two individuals can go, or a company could go against a government. No, this has to be two governments who have a conflict, and this case would be discussed within the International Court of Justice. They also give advisory opinions to different branches of the United Nations. And as I said before, the court is composed of 15 judges usually, and they are elected by the United Nations General Assembly and the Security Council. The connection between the International Court of Justice and the Security Council is a very interesting one. And I think that this is something worth discussing during the event itself. So what to do to prepare? I know that this might have been a very complicated, a very condensed overview of what we want to do. But these are general tips to prepare for the conference. First is to familiarize yourself with the topics. So what we mean by that is to, in the case of the International Court of Justice, to look up the case, maybe get acquainted with the terms used. What is a private military contractor? Who are the biggest sides in this conflict? And overall, what the legislation is. Then, of course, decide upon your committee preference. It's good to first look into all of the subjects before making your choice. The next step is register. There should be a link in the chat. I hope that Victoria has it. Then info packs will be prepared by us, the organizers, and will be sent out to you after you register. The info packs will be very informative and give you an overview, in our case, of the Nisour Square massacre, of the private military contractors, and so on. And then prepare for the work. So every committee assigns some sort of assignment before the conference, and so I suggest you can keep your eye on that. And for the last part, we really hope to see you participate, and really we just hope for the physical format, so we could really experience the full Model United Nations life. So for now, that's it from me. I'm very open to questions. I know that I'm going to admit I was very nervous. So I think that I sped through the whole introductory part. So I hope that you have questions. I'm very open to them.
How in the international court, judge or something else makes these laws?
How we sort of make our decisions and what laws we base our decisions on, we try to, we're not going to force you to look through all of the relevant international law, but we're going to compile them into these really easily accessible info packets, I think we're calling them. So with international law, it's very often that the law doesn't say exactly how to act. Rather, it's the job of the judges to look at the law, look at the situation, and say, yes, I think that this is how this situation should be solved, um, and what would be the just outcome in this situation. And thank you for your question.
Because in this situation, this court haven't a lot of legitimacy, or I think other countries like authoritarian countries don't hear it or just ignore.
Yeah, this is the issue with these international courts. I completely agree. Some countries do ignore the verdicts. But with the International Court of Justice, what's good about it is that all of the members of the United Nations automatically have to listen to these verdicts. If they don't, it's up to the United Nations or Security Council if they want to punish them somehow, to give them sanctions, for example, if they don't follow it. And it's not just authoritarian countries that don't follow the verdicts, because of the recent case was where the United Kingdom refused to follow the court verdict by the International Court of Justice. It was a case where they were still occupying a territory in the Indian Ocean, even though the country they were occupying repeatedly asked them to leave. And the court once again told the United Kingdom to remove their military bases from the country, and they ignored it. So this is an interesting question, and I really hope that we can discuss it within the conference itself. And it is an interesting topic. How do you make someone follow the rules if you cannot really threaten them with consequences? There was a question in the chat. How are the judges and lawyers divided? Are we going to choose that? We would give the first choice up to you. When you choose a committee and you choose us, for example, we will turn to you and ask you, do you want to be a judge or do you want to be a lawyer? And depending on how many people choose what side, we try to make this decision as democratically as possible. But the places are limited. There are only 4 lawyers, so it really depends on the interest. Oh, and one more thing regarding the last question. We're going to publish the list of the judges with the info pack. So there.
Excuse me for interrupting. I have one question. Do you think that international court and United Nations in general that they are not too fast to have the decision about some situation, and sometimes if situation needs military no, if we need to we force do something or help somebody, when if we wait that the international court or UN structures, if they make decision, it can be late.
Yeah, this is a good question because the efficacy or how well the United Nations works is a very good question, and I think that many people, including me, have criticisms about it. But I think because the United Nations encompasses so many countries from different ideologies, from different backgrounds, it's very important to be very careful about making decisions. Even though there are some United Nations structures that I think have sort of lost their purpose over time. One of those things would be the veto right within the Security Council. It's a bit absurd that we have to make a decision. 14 of the members agree, and one says, sorry, guys, I don't think so. And that decision is no longer happening. But I think that when we look at the law that regulates United Nations, there is a lot of potential for better um, solutions, for better problem solving, but they are not utilized properly. There's This is maybe off topic, but I think that there is this very interesting relationship between the Security Council and the International Court of Justice that I would like to see played out. Is that they are two different organs, let's put it this way, and technically with the veto power and everything, the Security Council has a lot of power. But at the same time, the International Court of Justice has the right to make decisions that go against Security Council decisions. So this has never happened through the history of the United Nations, but I think it would be really, really interesting to see. Um, I do think that this is a very complex topic. On one side, we have problems that we need solutions to quickly, but at the same time, decisions that are made maybe too hastily can have severe consequences. Um, so I think this is a situation where you can't win, you can't lose, you're just stuck. And that's the beauty and pain of international relationships.
And you know that when was Cold War, the United Nations was like a dangerous weapon because two opposite sides, if they have a lot of countries, these two sides, these have a lot of countries and a lot of votes in United Nations, and sometimes they banned good decision or skipping bad ones. And do you think that United Nations is really good instruments to regulate problems in our world?
Yeah, this is definitely true. I think that when we look back at the Cold War and the purpose that the United Nations served during the Cold War, um, was the decision making slow? Yes, but I think that with the polarization of the world, we see the same thing today. We see that there are different blocs emerging between countries that have formed alliances, and then problem solving becomes very difficult because every bloc wants to serve their own interest, and I cannot really blame them for it. Everybody wants the best outcome for themselves. Um, but I think that what this particular crisis has shown us, that this international communication and international relationships are so vitally important. We don't have a war situation right now. We have a health-related crisis. So I think that the United Nations has shown that it can serve a purpose between not just making either peace between two warring nations, but it can also be a tool to improve other sorts of communications, be it medical, be it humanitarian in nature. So the purpose of the United Nations in this time, I think, is shifting a little bit compared to the Cold War.
Thank you for the answers.
I have kind of a strange question, but anyway, I want to ask that. What do you think in total about the position of judgments that, if you look at that, like obviously, the normal people, as we are, decide somehow what to deal with other people's life. So what do you think about that?
Sorry, I'll ask for clarification. I think that my connection cut out a little bit. So could you please repeat it? I'm so sorry.
No worries. Okay, so if you look at that a little bit more obvious, so the judgments are the same people as we are, and they somehow can influence the other people's life, and not always that can be in the best way or otherwise. And so, what do you think about that? That upon that all, people as we decide something on others' lives.
Ooh, that's a very philosophical one. Thank you for asking it. It's something that I, as a law student, and maybe hopefully a lawyer in the future, I have to grapple with, is that courts, be it the International Court of Justice or the Supreme Court of Estonia, we're dealing with a small number of individuals passing decisions on these vital, very important topics. And so we hope that those people are very qualified and very objective, but we know that they're human. We know that they have biases. So I think that the only thing that we can hope that is that through finding consensus, those people can work out the best possible solution. And the good thing about lower level courts is that when you don't agree with the judgment made, you can go one step higher. But with the International Court of Justice, this is the end of the line. There are no other decisions to be made out from here. But I think that what helps is that the International Court of Justice doesn't make judgments between individuals. They make decisions between states, and states can either accept the verdict or they can ignore it. But this is a very interesting one. This comes back to, should we have one judge that makes this decision, or should we have perhaps a jury of peers that can make this decision? But it's a bit difficult within international law. So instead, we have to have this court of 15 people, all from different countries, all over the world, from different legal backgrounds, that hopefully can make decisions as objectively as possible, as humanly possible, I would say. But it is a very important question, and I don't think I have a concrete answer to it. It's such an interesting philosophical topic to discuss. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Maybe I'll add a little bit about this international law. The International Court of Justice isn't the only international court that solves these issues. We have the International Criminal Court that really focuses on criminal actions, as the name suggests. We have different war tribunals, the most famous one being the Yugoslavian one. And it's very interesting how these international principles have emerged. And the most difficult part of it is to make sure people are and the states are actually following the decisions and trying to solve the issue at hand. But there have been cases where countries have put up their cases for a trial, but then have no intention of following the judgment made. So this is an interesting part to look at. So maybe if you have anything else to ask about the overall formatting of the conference, or maybe our International Court of Justice, or any real life law examples, I would be very very glad to answer those.
I would perhaps step in a little bit. I would like to throw a question to our participants, because this is the first year we're doing ICJ, International Court of Justice, and I'm interested in how is it perceived by the school students. Have you heard about ICJ before? Why did you choose to come to this info hour? Does it intrigue you? Because I think we are really fond of making up new formats and new topics, and this year we're really passionate about this one. So what do you feel about it? Would you be interested in being a judge or a lawyer? Maybe you could say something. All right.
I guess, can I give it a try?
Yes, fantastic.
So first of all, I've chosen that. I think because that's the part of life which influences everybody. I mean, everybody has some situations in their town, and crime is everywhere, to be honest. And to compare to the others committed in total, that thing will always be in every century, in every single moment. So it's actually, we do not even think how close is it to us, and it can be, and we'll never know who will be under the law and who will be judging.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in other words, I would say you have your personal interest in the law, so that's why you chose it. That's good. Okay.
Thank you.
Really, I can say that it was interesting, and I was interested in this info hour because, as I'm very skeptical about the United Nations and the benefits it brings, often the UN expresses concern but cannot influence dangerous countries or societies in any way. And today, I think that United Nations really can sometimes something do to influence dangerous elements of other society. Thank you for info.
Thank you.
I chose this because I'm really interested in international law and in international relationships, especially. I've always been interested in law, and I wanted to study law for a long time. Now I'm kind of torn between what was the word? Political science and law. So I'm kind of like right now looking between different subjects and themes on what to go with. And yeah, it seems very interesting as well, obviously.
I have to say, I might be a little biased, but law is pretty cool to study from a personal experience.
I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, and actually, it's really cool if you come to EstMUN. All of our chairs, they're experts in different subjects. So if you have a chance to talk informally with them, they can say about different universities and study areas. So it's really cool. Okay.
Yeah, I think we have 3 to 4 people who have studied political science or are studying political science. 2 people, including me, who study law and media studies, environmental studies. So people are really studying what they now want to pass on.
I think we also have IT or some kind of those areas. So yeah, our team is pretty international and pretty diverse also. So okay, we don't have to drag it into 1 hour. So if you don't have any questions, then we can also call it a day. But if you have a burning question, it's your chance to ask.
Can I ask? So I wanted to ask Liisa, your personal opinion. If you see that the lawyer or the judge gave the wrong conclusion, the person who was judged, what do you do? If you could.
Okay, this is a difficult one. Did I understand you right that if I see that a judge or anyone regarding the process makes a wrong decision or a decision based on wrong, okay, in real life or in this format?
Real life.
Real life is difficult. Depends on the person. So I've had some practice within the courts, and I have people who are older than me that are already practicing. And the thing is that we can recognize when the court have made really strange decisions. And so, but we cannot go and dispute that decision if the client or the person who this decision was made about didn't want to. So there was a case recently where there was a case where it was a kind of difficult case. It was about business, and one small business owner got a decision that was made about him that was a little bit strange. It was too strict. It was too. There was no precedent. But even though his lawyers advised him to go forward with it and dispute it, he didn't, because the issue is that unfortunately lawyers and going through the court system tends to be very expensive. So I think that this is the very unfortunate thing about being a lawyer. And from a personal experience, when studying, for example, I'm presented with a case where I can see that one party is doing something really strange, but because I was assigned to that person, then I have to defend their case. It's sometimes fun, sometimes very sad. It personally sometimes hurt my sense of justice. But I think that the most important thing to keep in mind is that every person needs to be defended within the court of law. And if a decision is made, it's very important to look at it critically, because judges aren't perfect, decisions aren't perfect, and to listen to counsel. And if they say that, you should go forward with it, then to go forward with it. So I think that this is important. But as a lawyer, for example, or a prosecutor, well, prosecutors have the choice to go forward themselves. But if you're a lawyer, then it depends on the person you are defending. But thank you for the question. It's a very good practical one.
Thank you for the answer.
So once again, I think that if you have any more either practical questions about being a lawyer or studying or the specific one, please feel free to ask. But if there are no more questions, then I'm once again very thankful that you came and listened and participated in the conversation.